Aristotle's Lantern by R. David Fulcher. They were moving on without him, their headlamps bobbing off in the darkness. Tom, last in the caving group, lagged more and more behind. They never noticed he was no longer there. He didn't mind, though. Finally, he would be alone to photograph the unusual rock formations without the group leader constantly urging him onward through the cave. He found his way into a small chamber. Over thousands of years, mineral deposits caused the stalactites hanging from the ceiling to join with the stalagmites rising from the floor, creating odd-shaped structures. The bright light from his headlamp illuminated two passages from this room, one heading back to the main passage and one off to the corner. The tunnel in the corner was small, about the width of the average plumber, and he would have to wriggle his way through. For a moment, Tom contemplated the wisdom of going off on his own. He weighed the dangers of the cave versus the excitement of exploration. He made up his mind. No guts, no glory. Besides, he could always catch up with the group later if his choice of path proved to be a dead end. He stepped over a rock ledge to the entrance of a small passage and crouched down to let the lamp on his helmet light the tunnel. Although a tight fit, it could still be navigated by crawling on his belly and pushing his backpack in front of him. He wriggled into the tunnel. While his caver's suit protected him from the mud and the rock, it did little to alleviate the psychological impact of the tight, dark place. Tom felt as if the entire weight of the mountain was pressing down upon him as he pushed himself forward, but he was determined to fight claustrophobia and continue. After moving slowly for what seemed like an unbearable distance, the passage released him and opened into a large chamber. Tom was sweating quite a bit, but he was also able to stand up in the large room and stretch his sore muscles. Panning his light around the chamber, Tom was impressed by his discovery. The room was dominated by a shallow pool, so smooth and clear that the entire ceiling reflected on its still surface as a mirror image. Unfortunately, Tom's hopes of going on further were dashed as the opposite wall held only a stone curtain, called so because it resembled flowing folds of fabric rather than rock, but it was impenetrable. He couldn't go forward, but he was still very excited. The photo of the perfect mirror of the cave would be stuff of dreams. He rummaged through his pack for his camera and flash assembly. Tom was attaching the flash to the camera when he was jolted by the sound, as if the water in the pool made a slosh and a splash. As he turned the light towards the pool, he was astonished to see that the water's smooth glass skin had been disturbed. Silent currents raced just beneath the surface. Slowly putting his gear aside, Tom cautiously moved to the water's edge for a better look. While some water was indeed splashing against the sides of the pool, the greatest displacement of water was further out in the pool. A whirlpool was forming as if a giant drain plug had suddenly been yanked from the bottom. The bare stone sides of the basin were exposed by the water rapidly draining away. Tom was perplexed, but realizing this was a fleeting opportunity, he quickly reached for his camera. He fumbled with the flash while he watched the pool. Finally, the light clicked into place and he took his aim. He quickly snapped off some shots of the draining pool and the curtain formation, regretting not being quick enough to capture the pool in its pristine condition. It was then, after satisfying his artistic needs, that he began to worry. Clearly, whatever he'd witnessed was an uncommon geological event. Perhaps there'd been a minor shift in the Earth's crust, and it was just his luck to be underground when it happened. While he had heard of his fair share of stories from the more experienced cavers, none of them included mysterious whirlpools. Whether the emptying of the pool and the shift of the Earth's crust was good or bad luck remained to be seen. Then, of course, there was the fact that he had foolishly set off on his own, and the group had no idea of his whereabouts. Whatever the cause, if this dead-end chamber was becoming unstable, it would be prudent to leave immediately. But, overtaken by curiosity more than dread, Tom did not leave. Instead, he stood there staring, camera in hand, as the pool gradually lowered. An opening became visible at the pool's base as expected, but there was more. To Tom's amazement and horror, something squirmed to get out of the opening, fighting clumsily against the drag of the draining water. Its features were indistinct in the darkness, and, at first, to Tom it appeared to be all mouth and no body. Finally, it wrestled itself out of the hole, and then out of the pool, and onto the muddy ground. Focusing his lamp on it, Tom thought, "Is that an armadillo?" No, it had no eyes Tom could see, but nonetheless it slowly turned its body in his direction and lunged towards him. Reason overcame Tom's sudden shock, and he knew he had to get out of there. Steadying himself for a final photo, he took a picture of the thing, and in the temporary blindness from the flash, he had the terrible thought that it was somehow right beside him. His sight quickly came back to him, and Tom was grateful to see that the creature had made little progress in his direction. He chanced one more look back, while throwing his camera in the pack. Confident that the creature had not quickened its approach, Tom wriggled back into the passageway. The tunnel seemed more oppressive than before, and Tom's breath labored as he pushed the pack forward and belly crawled along. He paused once and swore he heard a grating sound that must be the creature following him at a glacial pace behind. Suddenly, his pack wedged up against something as he tried to push it forward. He shoved hard, using both arms, but the pack barely moved. Had there been a cave-in? Tom was overcome with fear. If the passage was blocked, he would have to turn around, back towards the dead-end room and the creature. Before Tom could consider his next move, he felt his pack being wrenched from his hands. In the dim light of the lamp, he watched wide-eyed as his pack was violently shaken side to side against the walls of the package. The clattering of the pack's contents was so deafening in the tunnel silence that Tom wanted to cover his ears or scream. Just as quickly, the thrashing stopped, and something began to squirm over the pack. Something with a gaping mouth ringed with 5 razor-sharp teeth. Tom screamed and thrust his body backwards, leaving the pack behind. How had the thing gotten ahead of him? As he scrambled backwards, Tom's right boot kicked something. He tested the space warily again with his boots, and it was still there. Then it began to move, climbing over his boot. Tom screamed again and looked back towards the way he had come. The second creature was still there and continued its deliberate advance over his pack and towards him. Tom began to whimper, and in the silence, it was deafening, so he covered his ears.